The Corallians had never known war. Their worlds bloomed with life, their cities pulsed with harmony, until the sky turned black with machines. The harvesters came without warning, cold, relentless, devouring everything green and living. The screams of entire forests were silenced. Peaceful hands could not stop blades of steel. In desperation, a signal was sent, not to allies, there were none left, but to them, to the Deathworlders. Most feared them, some hated them, but when humanity answered, they came not as conquerors, but as monsters who fought worse monsters. This is the story of salvation through fire, of innocence shielded by fury, and of what happens when the galaxy's most peaceful species calls upon its most feared. The desperate call. The garden world of Corallis Prime had never known violence. For 3,000 years, the Corallian Federation had existed in perfect harmony with their environment. Their cities grew from living trees, their technology worked alongside nature rather than against it. The Corallians themselves resembled walking flowers, their bodies covered in soft petals that changed color with their emotions. They had evolved from plant life, and their entire civilization reflected this peaceful origin. Chancellor Merrick stood in the living spire that served as the planetary command center. His petals had turned a deep blue, the color of profound sadness and fear. Through the transparent walls made of crystallized tree sap, he could see the sky burning. Massive ships hung in the atmosphere like mechanical diseases, their hulls covered with harvesting equipment designed to strip worlds bare of organic life. The Harvester Collective had arrived 3 days ago. They were a race of machines that had long ago consumed their creators, then moved across the galaxy, consuming everything organic they could find. Planets, forests, animals, entire species, all became fuel for their endless expansion. They showed no mercy because they could not understand the concept. To them, organic life was simply a resource to be collected. Merrick watched another city die. The harvesters descended like metal locusts, their conversion beams breaking down trees, buildings, and people into their basic elements. The screams of his people echoed across the communication networks before cutting off abruptly. One by one, the lights of Corallian civilization were going dark. "Chancellor," called Advisor Lina, her own petals flickering between yellow fear and red panic. "The northern continent has gone silent. The harvesters have consumed everything there. Our defense fleet was destroyed within hours." Merrick closed his large, gentle eyes. The Corallian defense fleet consisted of 20 ships designed for exploration and emergency rescue. Their weapons were meant to clear asteroids from shipping lanes, not fight a war. Against the Harvester war machines, they had been as effective as throwing flower petals at a forest fire. "How long do we have?" Merrick asked, though he already knew the answer would bring no comfort. "Our analysis suggests 6 hours before they finish harvesting the western continent and move to the capital region," Lina replied. Her voice carried the musical quality all Corallians possessed, but today it sounded like a funeral song. Merrick moved to the communication array, his roots extending into the living network that connected all Corallian worlds. His fingers, more like delicate branches than human digits, activated the emergency beacon that would send a message across known space. Most species would ignore it. The galaxy was vast, and distant wars were not their concern, but there were stories whispered in the dark corners of space stations and trading posts. Stories about a violent species from a world so dangerous that most civilized races refused to visit it. They called them Deathworlders, these humans from Earth. Their planet was said to be a nightmare of extreme weather, deadly predators, and constant natural disasters. The humans themselves were described as savage, emotional creatures who solved problems through violence. Most peaceful species like the Corallians avoided contact with humans. They were too unpredictable, too dangerous. But those same stories also spoke of something else. The humans, despite their violent nature, had sometimes intervened when peaceful species faced extinction. They seemed to have a strange protective instinct that activated when they saw innocence in danger. Merrick had no other choice. Every civilized species in the local sector either lacked the military power to help or was too far away to arrive in time. Only the humans were close enough and dangerous enough to make a difference. "Record emergency transmission," he said to the communication system. The device hummed to life, preparing to broadcast his words across light years of space. "This is Chancellor Merrick of the Corallian Federation," he began, his voice carrying the weight of his dying civilization. "We are under attack by the Harvester Collective. Our people are peaceful. We have no weapons capable of stopping them. Our children are dying. Our worlds are being consumed. We know humans are dangerous. We know you are called Deathworlders by the galaxy. But we also know you sometimes help those who cannot help themselves. Please, if any humans are listening to this, we beg for your assistance. We have nothing to offer in return except the promise that billions of innocent lives hang in the balance." The message burst outward at faster-than-light speed, carrying with it the desperate hope of a dying species. Merrick did not expect an answer. Even if the humans received the message and decided to help, they would never arrive in time. He was wrong. Deep in human space, the emergency beacon was detected by a monitoring station orbiting the planet New Geneva. The station's AI immediately classified the message as a Priority 1 humanitarian crisis and forwarded it to the nearest military command. Within minutes, it reached the desk of Admiral Lysa Thorne, commander of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. Admiral Thorne was a woman forged by decades of military service. Her hair had gone gray fighting pirates in the Outer Rim, and her eyes carried the weight of decisions that had saved millions of lives. She read the Corallian message twice, then activated her fleet-wide communication system. "All ships. This is Admiral Thorne. We have received a distress call from a peaceful species under attack by the Harvester Collective. I know most of you have heard about the Harvesters. They're machines that consume organic life. They've just attacked a species that has never known war." She paused, looking at the tactical display showing her fleet's current position. 47 human warships, each one designed for the brutal realities of interstellar combat. Each ship carried weapons that could crack planets and shields that could withstand the fury of stars. "We can reach their system in 18 hours if we push our engines to maximum. That's cutting it close, but it's possible. I want to be clear about what we're volunteering for. We'll be fighting a numerically superior enemy in their territory to save people we've never met. This mission is entirely voluntary." The response was immediate and universal. Every ship in the fleet confirmed readiness for immediate departure. Captain Zeph Torres, commanding the battlecruiser Relentless, spoke for all of them when he said, "Admiral, with respect, what kind of humans would we be if we ignored a call like that?" Admiral Thorne allowed herself a small smile. This was why she was proud to serve with these people. Humans might be violent, but they were violent in defense of the innocent. They had turned their destructive instincts into a shield for those who could not protect themselves. "Fleet orders, maximum burn to the Corallis system, battle stations in 17 hours, and someone get me everything our databases have on Harvester technology. We're going to hit them so hard they'll think Earth itself has come calling." The human fleet accelerated away from New Geneva, their fusion drives burning like artificial stars. Behind them, they left the safety of human space. Ahead lay a battle that would determine whether billions of peaceful plant beings lived or died. On Corallis Prime, Chancellor Merrick watched the Harvesters advance toward the capital city. His people huddled in their living shelters, praying to their ancient tree gods for a miracle they knew would not come. The sky grew darker as more Harvester ships arrived, their mechanical forms blotting out the sun. Then, something impossible happened. The deep space sensors, the few that remained operational, detected new contacts emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the system. The energy signatures were unlike anything in the Corallian databases, but they were definitely artificial. More ships were coming. "Chancellor," Lina called out, her petals flickering with confused hope. "We're receiving a transmission. It's from the humans." The voice that came through the communication system was nothing like a Corallian voice. It was harsh, commanding, and carried an undertone of barely controlled violence. But to Merrick, it sounded like salvation itself. "Corellian vessels, this is Admiral Thorne of the human 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. We received your distress call. Help is on the way. I need you to transmit all tactical data on enemy positions immediately. Also, please evacuate all civilians from areas currently under attack. When we engage these harvesters, the collateral damage is going to be significant." Merrick felt his petals shift to gold, the color of overwhelming relief and gratitude. The Deathworlders had come. The most dangerous species in known space had answered their call for help. Whether this would prove to be salvation or simply a different form of destruction remained to be seen. But for the first time in 3 days, Chancellor Merrick allowed himself to hope. The human fleet was 18 hours out, and the real battle was about to begin. When monsters fight monsters. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Corallis system like a pack of predators scenting blood. Admiral Thorne stood on the bridge of her flagship, the heavy battlecruiser Vindictive, studying the tactical display with the cold calculation of a lifetime warrior. What she saw made her jaw clench with barely controlled anger. "Tactical report," she commanded, her voice cutting through the bridge chatter like a blade. Captain Torres, temporarily assigned as Fleet Tactical Coordinator, highlighted the enemy positions on the main display. 43 Harvester ships in various stages of planetary assault. They're using standard strip mining protocols, breaking down organic matter at the molecular level. Estimated civilian casualties in the millions and climbing. Admiral Thorne's eyes fixed on the reading showing entire continents going dark as the harvesters consumed everything living. These weren't soldiers dying in battle. These were innocents being murdered by machines that couldn't comprehend what they were destroying. Fleet deployment, Alpha formation. All ships prepare for combat burn toward the primary engagement zone. I want maximum firepower concentrated on their largest vessels first. These machines are about to learn why the galaxy fears Deathworlders. The human fleet accelerated toward the inner system, their fusion drives painting the void with streams of controlled fire. Each ship was a masterpiece of human military engineering, designed by a species that had learned warfare in the brutal crucible of their homeworld. Every weapon, every defensive system, every tactical protocol had been tested in the endless conflicts that had forged humanity into the galaxy's apex predators. On Carolus Prime, Chancellor Merrick watched the human ships approach through his sensor network. He had expected maybe a small patrol group, a token force that would at least try to help. Instead, he was looking at nearly 50 warships, each one radiating power signatures that dwarfed anything in Corellian technology. Chancellor, Advisor Lina reported, her petals shifting to purple with awe. The human ships are broadcasting tactical coordination signals. They're asking us to mark civilian evacuation zones so they can avoid hitting them during their attack. Merrick felt a strange mixture of hope and terror. The humans were clearly powerful enough to fight the harvesters, but the energy readings from their weapons suggested they could accidentally destroy Corellian cities just with the overflow from their battles. The first contact between human and harvester forces came when a patrol group of 6 harvester frigates moved to intercept the approaching human fleet. The machines calculated that these organic ships, despite their unusual configuration, would be easily destroyed like all other resistance they had encountered. They had never fought humans before. The lead harvester frigate opened fire with its conversion beam, a weapon designed to break down organic matter into its component atoms. The beam struck the shields of the human destroyer Defiant and simply disappeared. The human ship's defensive systems absorbed the energy and converted it into power for their own weapons. Harvester ships opening fire, reported the sensor operator aboard the Vindictive. No effect on our shields. They're using some kind of molecular dissociation technology. Admiral Thorne smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. They're designed to fight peaceful species with standard energy shields. They've never encountered military-grade plasma barriers backed by gravitic generators. Return fire, all weapons. The human response was swift and devastating. Plasma cannons that could vaporize asteroids opened fire in perfect coordination. Magnetic accelerator rounds moving at significant fractions of light speed tore through harvester armor like paper. In less than 30 seconds, 6 harvester frigates became expanding clouds of superheated metal. The Harvester Collective's distributed intelligence network registered the loss of the patrol group with mechanical surprise. Never before had 6 of their ships been destroyed so quickly. The organic beings from this Earth fought with a level of tactical sophistication and raw destructive power that exceeded their programming parameters. The harvesters began to reposition their forces, abandoning their harvesting operations to concentrate on this new threat. If these humans represented a significant military power, they would need to be eliminated before they could interfere with the collective's expansion plans. Admiral Thorne watched the enemy fleet movements with professional interest. They're pulling back from their harvesting operations to face us directly. Good. That buys the Corellians some time. Captain Torres studied the tactical plot. Admiral, they're forming up in a defensive sphere around their command vessel. It's a logical formation for dealing with superior firepower. Logical but predictable, Thorne replied. Execute Plan Gamma. All ships prepare for close engagement. The human fleet split into 3 attack groups, each one approaching the harvester formation from a different angle. It was a maneuver that required perfect timing and absolute trust between ship commanders. One mistake would result in human ships firing into each other's formations. The harvesters opened fire with every weapon they possessed. Energy beams designed to level cities, magnetic pulse weapons that could disable entire fleets, and swarms of hunter-killer drones that moved like mechanical wasps. The space between the fleets became a maze of deadly energy discharges. The human ships danced through the barrage with a grace that seemed impossible for such massive vessels. Their pilots had been trained in the asteroid fields of Earth's system, where a single mistake meant death from collision or radiation exposure. Compared to navigating a dense asteroid field while under fire from pirates, this was just another day at the office. "Contact with their forward screen," reported Torres. "The Relentless and Sword of Terra are engaging their heavy cruisers." On his command ship, Captain Liu of the Sword of Terra coordinated his attack with clinical precision. His ship's main guns, accelerator cannons that used magnetic fields to launch projectiles at 20% of light speed, punched through Harvester armor plating like it was tissue paper. "Target their weapon clusters," he ordered his gunners. "I want those ships disabled, not destroyed. We need to understand their technology." But the Harvesters had no intention of being captured for study. When their ships took critical damage, they activated self-destruct sequences rather than risk their technology falling into organic hands. Massive explosions lit up the void as Harvester vessels chose destruction over defeat. Admiral Thorne watched the battle unfold with growing satisfaction. The human fleet was systematically dismantling the Harvester forces, but something nagged at her tactical instincts. The enemy was fighting too defensively, too conservatively for machines that had conquered dozens of systems. "Torres, check the sensor logs. How many Harvester ships did we detect when we first arrived?" Captain Torres ran the analysis quickly. "Initial count was 43 vessels, Admiral. And how many have we engaged so far?" 28 confirmed destroyed, 6 more heavily damaged and withdrawing." Admiral Thorne's eyes narrowed. "That leaves 9 ships unaccounted for. Where are they?" The answer came from the planet's surface. The missing Harvester vessels had landed on Corrales Prime and were conducting an accelerated harvesting operation, consuming entire cities in minutes rather than hours. They were using the space battle as a distraction while they completed their primary mission. "Admiral," the communication officer called out urgently, "we're receiving distress calls from the planet. The Harvesters are conducting massive surface operations. They're hitting population centers directly." On Corrales Prime, Chancellor Merrick watched in horror as Harvester ground forces swept through his capital city. Massive walking factories, each one the size of a building, moved through the streets, converting everything they touched into raw materials. Corallian civilians fled in panic, their beautiful petal-covered bodies wilting with terror. "Get me Admiral Thorne," Merrick commanded. The human admiral's voice came through the communication system, still carrying the sounds of space combat in the background. "Chancellor, we see what's happening. I'm dispatching 3 of our fastest ships to provide orbital support, but they won't arrive for several minutes." "Our people are dying," Merrick replied, his petals now black with despair. "Millions of them." "I know," Admiral Thorne said, and for the first time Merrick heard emotion in the human voice. It was anger, cold and controlled, but absolutely lethal. "And I promise you, Chancellor, the machines responsible for this will not leave your system alive." The Admiral switched to fleet-wide communication. "All ships, new priority targets. Those surface Harvesters just made this personal. I want every one of those machines turned into scrap metal. Execute pattern Delta, maximum burn to planetary orbit." The human fleet abandoned their methodical destruction of the space-based Harvesters and accelerated toward Corrales Prime at maximum thrust. Their fusion drives pushed them to accelerations that would have killed any unprotected organic being, but human inertial compensators were designed to handle the brutal physics of combat maneuvering. As they approached the planet, the human ships opened fire on the surface-based Harvesters with surgical precision. Orbital bombardment was one of the most dangerous weapons in any fleet's arsenal, capable of causing massive collateral damage to civilian populations. But human gunners had trained for exactly this scenario, using their weapons with the skill of surgeons removing a cancer. Plasma beams from orbit struck the walking factories with pinpoint accuracy. Each shot was calculated to destroy the target while minimizing damage to surrounding structures. The Harvesters, designed for strip mining operations rather than military combat, had no defense against orbital fire. One by one, the surface-based Harvesters exploded in brilliant fireballs. Their destruction sent shockwaves through the collective's network, causing the remaining space-based forces to break off their engagement and attempt to flee the system. Admiral Thorne was not inclined to let them escape. "All ships pursuit course. No Harvester vessel leaves this system. They came here to commit genocide. They don't get to try again somewhere else." The human fleet spread out in a pursuit formation, their sensors tracking every fleeing Harvester ship. Over the next 6 hours, they hunted down each one with relentless efficiency. By the time the sun set on Corrales Prime, not a single Harvester vessel remained operational in the system. Chancellor Merrick stood in his damaged command center, looking up at the human ships that now orbited his world like protective guardians. His people were alive, his civilization had survived, but the cost had been enormous. Entire continents had been stripped bare, millions had died, and the Corallian Federation would never be the same. Chancellor, Advisor Lina reported, Admiral Thorne is requesting permission to send down medical and engineering teams to assist with recovery operations. Merrick nodded, though he felt a strange mixture of gratitude and unease. The humans had saved his people, but they had done so with a level of violence that shocked him to his core. They had destroyed the harvesters with the same casual efficiency that the machines had used to harvest Corellian cities. What kind of beings, he wondered, could be so protective of innocence while simultaneously being so ruthlessly destructive? And what would it mean for the galaxy if these Deathworlders decided to expand their protective instincts beyond a single system? The humans had answered their call for help, but Merrick was beginning to understand that salvation sometimes came wearing the face of the very thing you feared most. Part 3. The Price of Salvation. 3 weeks after the battle, Corellius Prime struggled to return to something resembling normal life. Human engineering teams worked alongside Corellian botanists to restore the damaged ecosystems, their advanced technology helping to regrow forests that would have taken centuries to recover naturally. But despite the rebuilding efforts, the scars of the harvester attack ran deeper than the physical damage to the planet. Chancellor Merrick walked through the memorial grove that had been planted where the capital city's eastern district once stood. Each tree represented 1,000 lives lost to the harvesters, and the grove stretched beyond the horizon. His petals had remained a muted gray since the attack, the color of grief and uncertainty. Admiral Thorne found him there, studying a young sapling that would eventually grow into a towering memorial to those who had died. The human admiral had changed out of her military uniform for civilian clothes, but she still carried herself with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. "The medical reports show your people are recovering well," she said without preamble. "The psychological trauma will take longer to heal, but your species is remarkably resilient." Merrick turned to face the woman who had saved his civilization. Up close, Admiral Thorne looked older than her years, with lines around her eyes that spoke of too many difficult decisions. Her presence was both comforting and unsettling. "My people have never experienced violence on this scale," Merrick replied. "For 3,000 years we have lived in peace. Many of them don't understand how beings can be capable of such destruction." "You mean us," Admiral Thorne said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Merrick admitted. "We are grateful, Admiral, more grateful than words can express. But watching your ships destroy the harvesters, it was like watching one force of nature overcome another. My people are struggling to understand how to feel safe under the protection of beings they find terrifying." Admiral Thorne nodded thoughtfully. "I've seen this before, Chancellor. Peaceful species always have the same reaction when they first encounter human military doctrine. We are predators, and everyone can sense it, even when we're trying to help." They walked together through the memorial grove, their footsteps soft on the replanted grass. Human and Corellian work crews could be seen in the distance, cooperating on reconstruction projects despite the species barrier. "There's something else," Merrick continued. "My advisors are asking what you want in return for your help. In galactic politics, military intervention always comes with a price." Admiral Thorne stopped walking and turned to face him directly. "What do you think we want, Chancellor?" "I don't know," Merrick admitted. "That's what frightens us. Your fleet is powerful enough to conquer our entire system without effort. You could demand tribute, territory, political submission. We would have no choice but to agree. But we haven't made any demands," Admiral Thorne pointed out. "Our ships remain in defensive positions. Our crews have been helping with reconstruction. We've shared our medical technology and emergency supplies without asking for payment. What does that tell you about our intentions?" Merrick's petals shifted to a pale blue, the color of confused hope. "That perhaps the stories about humans are incomplete?" Admiral Thorne smiled, the first genuinely warm expression Merrick had seen from her. "The stories about us are true, Chancellor. We are violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. Earth is a death world that bred a species of apex predators, but what the stories often miss is why we became so violent." She gestured toward the memorial grove, where human and Corellian children were playing together despite their completely different biologies. Humans evolved as pack hunters and social creatures. We developed our capacity for violence to protect our families, our tribes, our communities. When we see innocence threatened by predators, every instinct we have demands that we intervene. It's not a choice for us, Chancellor. It's hardwired into our DNA. "But that raises another question," Merrick said. "If protecting innocence is instinctive for humans, what happens when you decide we need protection from ourselves? What happens when you determine that our peaceful nature makes us too vulnerable to survive without constant human oversight?" It was a perceptive question, and Admiral Thorne respected Merrick for asking it. That's the fear, isn't it? That we'll become benevolent tyrants making your decisions for you because we think we know better? Yes, Merrick said simply. Admiral Thorne was quiet for a long moment, choosing her words carefully. I won't lie to you, Chancellor. Some humans do think that way. There are those in our government who believe peaceful species need permanent human protection, whether they want it or not, but that's not the majority opinion, and it's not the policy of our military. What is your policy? We help when asked, we leave when told to go, and we respect the right of every species to make their own choices, even if we think those choices are mistakes. Admiral Thorne's voice carried the weight of official doctrine and personal conviction. The moment we start making decisions for other species is the moment we become no different from the harvesters. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Captain Torres, his expression grim. Admiral, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we've received priority communications from Fleet Command. We need you back on the ship immediately. Admiral Thorne's demeanor shifted instantly from diplomat to military commander. What's the situation, Captain? Multiple distress calls from across this sector. The Harvester attack on Corrales Prime wasn't an isolated incident. They're hitting peaceful systems throughout the region, and they're doing it simultaneously. Merrick felt his petals darken with worry. Other systems are under attack? 7 confirmed so far, Torres replied. The gentle gardeners of Thessia, the crystal singers of Melodia Prime, the deep swimmers of Aquatica, all peaceful species with no military capabilities. Admiral Thorne's jaw tightened. It's a coordinated campaign. Someone is directing the harvesters to target non-violent civilizations specifically. That's our assessment as well, Torres agreed. Fleet Command is requesting immediate deployment of all available ships. The scale of this operation is beyond anything we've seen before. Merrick watched the exchange with growing dread. The humans had saved his people, but now they were needed elsewhere. His world would be left without protection, vulnerable to another attack. Admiral Thorne noticed his expression. Chancellor, I know what you're thinking, but I can't leave a significant fleet here. Too many other worlds need help. I understand, Merrick said, though his voice carried the weight of resignation. You have done more for us than we had any right to expect. We cannot ask you to ignore other innocents who face the same fate we did. Actually, Admiral Thorne said thoughtfully, there might be another option. She activated her personal communicator and connected to the Vindictive's communication system. Fleet communications, patch me through to all ships in the system. All hands, this is Admiral Thorne. Her voice carried across every human vessel orbiting Corrales Prime. You've all seen the reports about the coordinated attacks across the sector. We're looking at a systematic campaign of genocide against peaceful species. Fleet Command wants every ship redeployed immediately. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. However, I'm authorized to ask for volunteers for a new assignment. The Corallian Federation has formally requested assistance in establishing their own defense force. This would mean extended deployment, training duties, and the possibility of extended combat operations if the harvesters return. Any ship that volunteers will be reassigned to the newly formed Sector Defense Initiative. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every single ship in the human fleet volunteered to remain in Corellian space. Captain Torres looked surprised. Admiral, if every ship stays here, Fleet Command won't have enough vessels to respond to all the other attacks. That's where the second part of the plan comes in, Admiral Thorne replied. She turned to Chancellor Merrick. Chancellor, how many other peaceful species are there in this sector? Dozens, Merrick replied. Perhaps as many as 50 civilizations that have never developed military technology. And how do you think they would respond to an offer of mutual defense cooperation? A federation of peaceful species backed by human military doctrine? Merrick's petals began to shift toward gold as he understood the implications. You're proposing an alliance, a way for peaceful species to maintain their nature while still having the ability to defend themselves. Exactly. We provide the military expertise and firepower. You provide the moral compass and the diplomatic connections. Together, we create a defensive network that can protect entire sectors from predators like the harvesters. Over the following weeks, the idea took shape with remarkable speed. The Sector Defense Initiative grew from a desperate plan to a revolutionary concept that would reshape galactic politics. Peaceful species that had never communicated before began coordinating their efforts, sharing resources and information under human military protection. The humans, for their part, found themselves in an unexpected role. Rather than conquerors or overlords, they became the guardians of civilization itself. Their ships patrolled shipping lanes, their marines trained local security forces, and their diplomats helped negotiate agreements between species that had vastly different ways of life. Chancellor Merrick stood once again in his command center, but now it was connected to a network spanning dozens of star systems. On his screens, he could see the status of Corellian colonies, allied worlds, and human patrol fleets. The peaceful species of the sector were no longer helpless prey waiting for the next predator to find them. Admiral Thorne had been promoted to sector commander. Her fleet expanded to include ships from Earth and volunteers from the allied worlds. The humans had built specialized vessels designed for protection rather than conquest, their weapons calibrated to defend rather than destroy. But the question that had haunted Merrick since the first attack remained. What would happen when the protectors decided their judgment was better than those they protected? The answer came during the first major political crisis in the new alliance. The crystal singers of Melodia Prime wanted to share their beautiful music with a nomadic species that requested cultural exchange. Human intelligence suggested the nomads might be scouts for a hostile empire, gathering information for a future invasion. The debate raged for weeks. The crystal singers insisted on their right to share their culture freely. The humans argued for caution and security screening. Both sides had valid points, and both sides were committed to their positions. In the end, it was Admiral Thorne who proposed the solution that would define the relationship between humans and their allied species for generations to come. The decision belongs to the Crystal Singers, she announced during a heated council session. Our job is to provide them with all the information we have, advise them of the risks, and then support whatever choice they make. If they want to proceed with the cultural exchange, we'll provide security. If they want to decline, we'll help them do so diplomatically. And if our analysis is correct and this leads to an invasion, asked Colonel Morrison, Thorne's chief intelligence officer, then we'll fight to defend them, just like we did for the Corellians, Admiral Thorne replied. But we don't make their choices for them. The moment we start doing that is the moment we become the very thing we're fighting against. The Crystal Singers chose to proceed with the cultural exchange, but with human security monitoring the entire operation. As it turned out, the nomads were exactly what they appeared to be, a peaceful species looking for new experiences and cultural connections. Human paranoia had been wrong, and crystalline trust had been vindicated. But the precedent was set. The humans would advise, protect, and support, but they would not rule. The alliance between predators and prey had found a balance that allowed both species to be true to their nature while working together for common survival. Years later, when Chancellor Merrick had grown old and his petals had turned the silver of honored age, he would look back on the day the humans first arrived and marvel at the unexpected path their salvation had taken. The Deathworlders had indeed brought fear to his people, but they had also brought hope, protection, and the radical idea that the strong could choose to serve the weak rather than dominate them. In a galaxy full of predators, humanity had chosen to be something different. They had chosen to be guardians, and the galaxy, despite its fears and suspicions, was slowly learning that sometimes salvation came from the most unexpected sources. Sometimes the monsters were the ones who stood between innocence and the darkness.